The auction block on Kepler Station reeked of desperation and disinfectant. The massive circular platform, suspended in the heart of the trading hub's central dome, rotated slowly under harsh white lights that cast everything in stark relief. Hundreds of alien species filled the tiered seating that rose in concentric circles around the platform, their voices creating a cacophony of clicks, growls, and electronic translations that echoed off the curved walls. Elena Vasquez stood in the holding pen with 47 other humans, her weathered hands gripping the electrified bars just tight enough to feel the warning tingle, but not trigger the pain response. Her dark eyes, lined with premature wrinkles from decades of manufactured despair, tracked every movement in the auction house with the precision of a predator studying prey. To the aliens watching, she appeared to be just another broken human slave, shoulders slumped in defeat, spirit crushed by 50 years of servitude. They could not have been more wrong. Beside her, 17-year-old Maya shifted nervously, her young face a mask of carefully practiced fear. Elena's daughter had been born into this charade, raised from infancy to play her part in humanity's greatest deception. Maya's trembling hands and wide eyes would fool any alien observer, but Elena could see the cold intelligence burning behind her daughter's performance. The girl was cataloging facial recognition patterns of the Zephyrin buyers in Section 12, just as Elena had taught her. Lot 47, announced the auctioneer, a towering Krillian whose crystalline bone structure caught the light in prismatic flashes. Human female, age 17 standard years, bred for intelligence and compliance. Ideal for technical work or entertainment. Maya was pushed forward onto the platform, and Elena forced herself to maintain the facade of helpless despair while her mind burned with cold fury. The girl walked with the perfect simulation of terror, her steps hesitant and shoulders hunched. The aliens in the audience leaned forward, their various sensory organs focusing on this new piece of merchandise. Bidding starts at 500 credits, the auctioneer continued. A Zephyrin in the premium section raised one of its four arms, its telepathic crown pulsing with interested purple light. Elena memorized its biosignature, adding it to the vast mental database she had been building for 3 decades. Species: Zephyrin merchant caste. Estimated age: 300 standard years. Weakness: psychic feedback vulnerability at 847.3 Hz frequency. Known crimes against humanity: purchase of 1,247 human children for neural experimentation. The bidding escalated quickly. Maya's apparent intelligence and youth made her a premium commodity. Elena watched Vorthan military contractors gesture with their segmented limbs, while Krillian overseers clicked their approval through their vocal crystals. Each bidder was photographed by Elena's enhanced memory, their species' weaknesses catalogued, their crimes against humanity documented. Finally, a Krillian Supreme Commander raised his massive clawed hand, ending the bidding at 47,000 credits. Elena recognized him immediately, Supreme Commander Zrex of the Hegemony Prime military district. His purchase of Maya wasn't random. Intelligence gathered by other human operatives had indicated he was planning something significant. As Maya was led away in neural restraints, she caught her mother's eye for just a fraction of a second. The girl's lips barely moved, but Elena read the message clearly in the micro-expressions they had practiced for years. Military compound, Northern District, weapons testing facility. Elena nodded almost imperceptibly, another piece of intelligence to add to humanity's growing strategic picture. The auction continued for 6 more hours. Elena watched as 23 more humans were sold to various alien species, each transaction adding to the vast database that humans had been compiling for 5 decades. To their captors, this was simply another day of commerce. To Elena and her people, it was another step toward the galaxy's reckoning. The holding pens emptied slowly as the day progressed. Elena was eventually purchased by a Vorthan industrial consortium for mining operations on Asteroid Station 7. As she was led away in restraints, she passed close enough to a middle-aged human man named David Chen to whisper a single word: Phoenix. David's eyes flickered almost imperceptibly in acknowledgement. The message would propagate through the network within hours. 3 days later, Elena found herself in the sulfur mines of Asteroid Station 7, her human-issued breathing apparatus barely filtering the toxic atmosphere. The working conditions were deliberately brutal. The Vorthans had calculated that a certain amount of human suffering increased productivity through fear motivation. Elena swung her plasma cutter at the asteroid wall with mechanical precision, but her mind was elsewhere. She was remembering Earth, not the primitive backwater world that alien historical records described, but the true Earth, humanity's fortress world at the edge of the galaxy where they had spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of war. Elena had been born in the underground cities of New Geneva, in the deep bunkers where humanity's greatest minds had developed technologies that would make the current galactic powers seem like children playing with toys. The plan had been audacious in its scope. Rather than announce themselves to the galaxy as conquerors, humanity would allow themselves to be conquered. They would endure decades of slavery and oppression while gathering intelligence on every alien species, learning their weaknesses, mapping their territories, understanding their psychology. When the time came, humanity would strike with surgical precision at every alien civilization simultaneously. The plan required sacrifice. It required parents to watch their children be sold into slavery. It required humans to endure torture, exploitation, and death while maintaining perfect cover. It required a level of patience and long-term thinking that no other species in the galaxy had ever demonstrated. It required humanity to become the greatest actors in galactic history. Elena paused in her mining to help a younger human worker named Marcus who had collapsed from exhaustion. As she lifted him to his feet, she whispered a series of numbers that sounded like coordinates, but were actually biological specifications for a toxin specifically designed to target Vorthan neural clusters. Marcus nodded weakly and continued working. By evening, he would have passed the information to Sarah, who would encode it in a traditional human lullaby and sing it during their mandated cultural preservation time. Sarah would teach the lullaby to the children, who would carry it to other work sites. Within a week, every human in the sector would know how to manufacture a Vorthan-specific biological weapon using common mining chemicals. This was how humanity had operated for 50 years. Every piece of cultural expression was actually intelligence transfer. Every human gathering was a strategy session. Every act of apparent compliance was preparation for war. Elena had personally documented the weaknesses of 47 alien species. She knew exactly how much pressure was required to shatter Krillian bone crystal, the precise frequency needed to overload Zephyrin telepathic centers, and the specific pheromone combinations that would trigger cannibalistic rage in Vorthan hive minds. She had memorized the family structures of 200 alien leaders, their personal fears, their military strategies, and their technological capabilities. More importantly, she knew that 200 million other humans across the galaxy were doing exactly the same thing. The human network spanned every inhabited system. They worked as servants in alien homes, recording private conversations and mapping security systems. They labored in alien factories, learning manufacturing processes and identifying critical infrastructure. They served as expendable soldiers in alien armies, studying military tactics and weapons technology from the inside. To the aliens, humans appeared to be the perfect slave species, intelligent enough to handle complex tasks, but too weak and passive to pose any threat. They lived shorter lives than most galactic species, which made them seem less capable of long-term planning. Their lack of natural weapons or enhanced physical abilities marked them as inherently inferior. The aliens had made one critical error in their assessment. They had confused patience with weakness. 2 weeks after the auction, Elena received word through the network that Supreme Commander Zrex was planning a public execution event on Hegemony Prime. 50 human children, including Maya, were to be killed in front of billions of viewers across the galaxy. The stated purpose was to demonstrate proper hierarchy and remind all species of their place in the natural order. Elena felt something crack inside her chest as she processed this information. For 50 years, she had maintained perfect emotional control. For 50 years, she had watched her people suffer in silence while they prepared for this moment. For 50 years, she had sacrificed everything for humanity's future. But watching alien monsters murder her daughter on galactic television would push her beyond even her considerable limits. The execution was scheduled for the anniversary of humanity's first contact with the Krillian hegemony, a date the aliens celebrated as the beginning of their dominance over the weakest species. It would take place in the Grand Coliseum on Hegemony Prime, broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Elena began her final preparations. Through the network, word spread to every human operative across the galaxy. After 5 decades of intelligence gathering, the database was complete. Every alien species had been cataloged. Every weakness had been identified. Every piece of critical infrastructure had been mapped. Phase 1 was ending. Phase 2 would begin with the death of innocents, but it would end with the galaxy learning exactly why humanity had never fought back. The journey to Hegemony Prime took 3 days. Elena was transported along with 50 other humans in a cargo ship designed for livestock. The conditions were deliberately degrading: minimal food, no sanitation, cramped quarters that prevented rest. The aliens wanted their victims to arrive broken and terrified. Elena used the time to run final systems checks on the quantum communication implant buried in her brainstem. The device had been installed before humanity's first contact with alien species, using technology so advanced that even Zephyrin telepaths couldn't detect it. Every human operative carried one, creating an instantaneous communication network that spanned the galaxy. The ship docked at Hegemony Prime on the morning of the execution. Elena was herded with the other humans through processing centers, where Krillian guards prodded them with energy weapons and shouted orders in their crystalline voices. The guards found human suffering amusing, and they made no effort to hide their contempt for the weak mammals they were about to watch die. Elena memorized the face of every guard, every official, every alien who showed pleasure at human suffering. In a few hours, that information would become very relevant. The Grand Coliseum was a massive amphitheater carved from a single crystal formation that rose from the planet's surface like a glittering mountain. 2 billion aliens could be seated in its terrace levels, with countless more watching through holographic projection across the galaxy. The execution platform stood at the center, a raised dais surrounded by energy barriers that would ensure no interruption of the proceedings. Elena was placed in a detention cell with a clear view of the platform. Around her, other human prisoners wept and prayed, their fear genuine even though they understood their role in the larger plan. Many of them would not survive the next few hours, but their sacrifice would purchase something invaluable: the element of surprise. Maya was among the 50 children brought onto the platform. Elena's daughter had lost weight during her captivity, and her youthful face showed signs of the abuse she had endured in Krillian military facilities. But her eyes remained sharp, and when she caught sight of her mother in the detention cell, she stood a little straighter. Supreme Commander Zrex took the podium to address the galaxy. His crystalline armor caught the light from Hegemony Prime's twin suns, casting rainbow patterns across the Coliseum floor. When he spoke, his words were translated into thousands of languages and broadcast to every corner of galactic civilization. "Citizens of the galaxy," Zrex announced, his voice carrying the natural resonance of Krillian vocal crystals. "Today we gather to witness a demonstration of natural law. For 50 years, the human species has served the galaxy in their proper role as servants and laborers. They have shown us the virtue of knowing one's place in the cosmic order." Elena felt her jaw clench involuntarily. Around the galaxy, 200 million other humans were having the same reaction. "However," Zrex continued, "recent intelligence suggests that some humans have begun to harbor thoughts of rebellion. They have forgotten the lesson of their conquest. They need to be reminded that strength determines hierarchy, and that the weak exist to serve the strong." The Supreme Commander gestured toward the 50 children on the platform. These young humans represent the future of their species. By eliminating them, we send a clear message that defiance will not be tolerated. We demonstrate to all lesser species what happens when the natural order is challenged. Elena closed her eyes and spoke a single phrase in ancient human language that sounded like a prayer, but was actually a military command. Pacification protocol terminated. Initiate Phoenix Directive. The quantum implant in her brainstem transmitted the phrase instantly to every human operative in the galaxy. After 50 years of waiting, the most patient species in galactic history was finally ready to reveal their true nature. Across thousands of worlds, in millions of alien homes and facilities, human slaves suddenly stopped what they were doing. Their posture changed. Their expressions hardened. The careful facade of weakness and compliance that they had maintained for 5 decades dropped away like a discarded mask. In the detention cell on Hegemony Prime, Elena stood and walked to the energy barrier that separated her from the guards. For the first time in 50 years, she allowed her true intelligence to show in her eyes. The Krillian guard noticed the change immediately. "What are you looking at, mammal?" the guard snarled, raising his energy weapon. Elena smiled with genuine warmth. "I'm looking at a dead man," she said in perfect Krillian dialect. "Tell me, do you have children?" The guard's crystalline facial structure shifted in confusion. Humans weren't supposed to speak Krillian. They certainly weren't supposed to show such confidence in the face of superior firepower. "Your mate is named Zrex, Elena continued conversationally. "Your nestlings are named Zrex and Brix. They attend the military academy on Hegemony Secondary. Your family lives in Residential Complex 7, Unit 4847. Your mate works in the Biological Weapons Division of the Hegemony Research Institute." The guard's weapon wavered. "How do you know that?" "Because we know everything," Elena said simply. "We've been watching you for 50 years. We know where you live, where you work, where your children go to school. We know your biological weaknesses, your psychological triggers, your military capabilities. We know exactly how to kill you and everyone you've ever cared about." On the execution platform, Supreme Commander Zrex had begun the ceremony. The first human child was forced to kneel before the energy guillotine. Elena recognized him as Timothy Chen, age 12, son of David Chen, who had received her message at the auction house. The energy blade descended. Timothy's head rolled across the crystal platform. Elena felt something fundamental break inside her chest, but her expression remained calm. Around the galaxy, human operatives felt the same breaking sensation. The boy's death was being broadcast to every world, every station, every ship in galactic space. It was also being broadcast to every human operative with quantum communication implants. Elena activated her neural interface and began transmitting targeting data. After 50 years of intelligence gathering, humanity had compiled detailed biological profiles on every alien species. They knew exactly which toxins would affect which nervous systems, which frequencies would disrupt which brain patterns, which psychological triggers would cause which species to self-destruct. In the Zephyrin home worlds, human servants began adding specific chemical compounds to their master's food. The chemicals were harmless to humans, but would cause catastrophic neural feedback in Zephyrin telepathic centers within 6 hours. On Vorthan industrial worlds, human workers activated pheromone dispensers hidden in the ventilation systems. The artificial scents would trigger the cannibalistic instincts that Vorthan hive minds had evolved to suppress, turning entire colonies into battlefields within minutes. In Krillian military facilities, human technicians began broadcasting sonic frequencies through the communication systems. The frequencies were specifically tuned to shatter crystalline bone structure, and every Krillian who heard them would experience immediate skeletal collapse. On Hegemony Prime, Elena watched as the second child was executed, then the third, then the fourth. With each death, her fury grew colder and more focused. By the time they reached Maya, Elena had transmitted enough targeting data to coordinate simultaneous strikes on 40,000 alien facilities across the galaxy. Maya knelt before the energy guillotine with perfect composure. When the guards forced her head down, she looked directly at her mother and smiled. Elena saw her daughter's lips move in a silent message. Make them pay. The energy blade descended. Elena screamed. It was not the scream of a broken slave or a grieving mother. It was the war cry of a predator species that had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. The sound carried harmonics that human vocal cords should not have been able to produce, frequencies that resonated with the quantum communication implants carried by every human operative in the galaxy. Across the stars, 200 million humans heard their sisters cry and answered with violence that had been building for 5 decades. On the agri-world of Harvest Station, human farm workers turned on their Zephyrin overseers with tools that had been carefully modified over decades of subtle sabotage. What appeared to be simple farming implements were actually precision weapons designed to exploit specific vulnerabilities in Zephyrin anatomy. The overseers died before they could activate their telepathic distress calls. In the industrial complexes of Vorthan space, human laborers activated sonic devices hidden in the machinery. The devices broadcast the mating calls of the Krex swarm, the only predator that Vorthans truly feared. The artificial mating calls triggered panic responses that caused entire hive clusters to self-destruct rather than face imaginary predators. On military stations throughout Krillian territory, human technical staff activated viral programs that had been hidden in computer systems for decades. The programs overloaded power grids, vented atmosphere from critical sections, and turned defensive weapons on their own crews. But the most devastating attacks were psychological. Human domestic servants across the galaxy began reciting detailed information about their alien masters' personal lives, family members, and secret fears. They revealed that humans had been documenting every conversation, every private moment, every vulnerable instant for 50 years. The psychological impact of learning that their most trusted servants had been enemy agents all along shattered alien morale more effectively than any weapon. On Hegemony Prime, Elena stepped through the energy barrier that should have been impossible for any prisoner to breach. The quantum communication implant in her brainstem had been broadcasting override codes to the detention facility's security systems since her arrival. As the barrier collapsed, she walked calmly toward the Krillian guard who had been questioning her. "Your family is already dead," she informed him conversationally. "Human operatives in Residential Complex 7 activated a sonic weapon 15 minutes ago. Your mate and nestlings experienced complete skeletal collapse approximately 12 minutes ago. Their deaths were instantaneous and probably painless." The guard raised his energy weapon with trembling claws. "You're lying. Humans don't have weapons. Humans are weak." Elena reached into her mouth and extracted what appeared to be a dental filling. In reality, it was a biomechanical device that had been disguised as dental work for 30 years. She placed it against her throat, and it bonded with her larynx, transforming her vocal cords into something far more dangerous. When she spoke again, her voice carried subsonic frequencies specifically tuned to disrupt Krillian nervous systems. "We have never been weak," she said, and the guard's crystalline skeleton began to vibrate in resonance with her words. "We have been patient." The guard's bones shattered like glass, and he collapsed in a pile of crystal fragments and organic matter. Elena walked past his remains toward the execution platform. Around her, other human prisoners were emerging from their cells as quantum overrides disabled the security systems. Each human carried concealed weapons that had been built from seemingly innocent materials over decades of careful preparation. On the platform, Supreme Commander Zrex was preparing to execute the 31st child when the Colosseum's communication systems activated with an incoming transmission. Elena's voice echoed through the massive amphitheater, translated into every language spoken by the assembled audience. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said, her words carrying the same commanding presence that Zrex had used earlier. "You have made a fundamental error in your understanding of human nature. You believed that our lack of resistance indicated weakness. You assumed that our compliance meant acceptance. You thought that our patience was submission." On the platform, Zrex spun toward the source of the transmission. He could see Elena approaching through the crowds of panicking aliens, walking with the calm confidence of someone who had planned this moment for decades. "You were wrong," Elena continued. "We are not weak. We are not submissive. We are not your slaves. We are the most patient predators this galaxy has ever produced, and we have spent 50 years learning everything there is to know about each and every one of you." Reports began flooding into the Colosseum's communication centers from across the galaxy. Zephyrin home worlds were reporting total communication blackouts. Vorthan industrial centers were broadcasting emergency distress signals before going silent. Krillian military stations were transmitting automated distress beacons indicating catastrophic system failures. At this moment, Elena announced as she stepped onto the execution platform, human operatives are attacking alien facilities on 40,000 worlds simultaneously. We know your weaknesses. We know your fears. We know where you live, where you work, where your families sleep. We have spent 50 years preparing for this day. Zrex raised his personal energy weapon and aimed it at Elena's chest. "This is impossible. Humans don't have the technology for coordinated attacks across galactic distances. Humans don't have the intelligence for strategic planning." Elena smiled and activated another concealed device. This one had been disguised as a simple hair ornament for 25 years, but it was actually a personal shield generator using technology that was several centuries more advanced than anything the current galactic powers possessed. Zrex's energy blast splashed harmlessly across Elena's shield, and the feedback overloaded his weapon, causing it to explode in his claws. "We have been underestimated for the last time," Elena said, walking closer to the Supreme Commander. "You want to know what humans are really capable of. You want to understand what 50 years of patience and preparation can accomplish." She gestured toward the surviving children on the platform. "Maya, initiate revelation protocol." Elena's daughter, who should have been dead, stood up from where she had been lying motionless behind the energy guillotine. The device that had appeared to decapitate her had actually been sabotaged by human operatives weeks earlier, modified to create a holographic illusion while protecting the victim with a personal shield. Maya activated her own concealed communicator and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Maya Vasquez, speaking for the human resistance. We have a message for every alien species in the galaxy." The transmission showed real-time footage from 40,000 worlds where human operatives were simultaneously attacking alien facilities. The scope of the coordinated assault was staggering. It represented a level of planning and organization that no alien species had thought humans capable of achieving. "For 50 years, you have enslaved us," Maya continued. "You have bought and sold us. You have tortured us, experimented on us, and murdered us for entertainment. You believed we were too weak to resist, too primitive to organize, too short-lived to plan effective resistance." More footage showed human servants in alien homes neutralizing their masters with weapons that had been disguised as common household items. Human workers in alien factories were systematically destroying critical infrastructure. Human soldiers in alien armies were turning their weapons on their commanders. "You were wrong about everything," Maya said. "We are not the weakest species in the galaxy. We are the most dangerous. We allowed ourselves to be conquered so that we could study you, learn your weaknesses, and position ourselves for the most comprehensive military campaign in galactic history." Elena reached Supreme Commander Zrex and placed her hand on his crystalline chest. She could feel his rapid heartbeat through the biological tissue between his armor plates. "You killed my daughter," she said quietly. "You murdered children for entertainment. You broadcast their deaths across the galaxy to terrorize other species into compliance." Zrex tried to speak, but Elena activated another sonic device that flooded his nervous system with painful interference. "Here's what's going to happen," Elena continued. "Every alien government will surrender unconditionally to human authority within 72 hours. Any species that refuses will be systematically exterminated using biological weapons specifically designed for their physiology. We have spent 50 years developing these weapons. We know exactly how to kill each and every one of you." The transmission from Maya showed real-time updates from across the galaxy. Alien governments were falling faster than their communication networks could track. Human operatives had achieved strategic surprise on a scale that should have been impossible for any species to coordinate. "This is not revenge," Elena said, looking directly into Zrex's eyes. "This is justice. This is what happens when you underestimate humanity. This is what 50 years of patience looks like when it finally ends." She activated the final device concealed in her clothing, a bioweapon dispenser that released Krillian-specific toxins into the air around the execution platform. Zrex and every other Krillian in the immediate area began experiencing rapid cellular breakdown. "You want to know why we never fought back?" Elena asked as Zrex collapsed to his knees, his crystalline armor cracking as his biological systems failed. "Because we were gathering intelligence. Because we were positioning our assets. Because we were waiting for the perfect moment to destroy all of you simultaneously." Around the galaxy, the scope of humanity's deception was becoming clear. Every human slave had been a spy. Every human servant had been an assassin. Every human worker had been a saboteur. For 50 years, aliens had invited their destroyers into their homes, their facilities, their most secure installations. Elena knelt beside the dying Supreme Commander and spoke quietly in his ear. "My daughter is alive. Your species is extinct. In 6 hours, every Krillian in the galaxy will be dead from biological weapons that we have been deploying for the past 50 years. Your military is destroyed. Your government is gone. Your home worlds are sterilized." Zrex tried to speak, but his vocal crystals were cracking as the toxin spread through his system. "Tell me," Elena continued, "how does it feel to be the weakest species in the galaxy?" The Supreme Commander died without answering. Lena stood and walked to the center of the execution platform. Around her, the Grand Colosseum was in chaos as alien spectators tried to flee while human operatives systematically shut down all transportation and communication systems. Maya joined her mother at the center of the platform, and together they addressed the galaxy. "This is Elena Vasquez, speaking for humanity," Elena announced. "The 50-year pacification protocol is now terminated. The galaxy is under new management." The transmission showed real-time maps of human forces emerging from hidden bases throughout galactic space. Massive ships that had been disguised as derelict hulks were powering up their weapon systems. Human colonies that had appeared to be primitive settlements were revealing themselves as advanced military installations. "We are not the same species that allowed itself to be conquered 50 years ago," Elena continued. "We are the children and grandchildren of the greatest military strategists in human history. We have been raised from birth to carry out this plan. We have spent our entire lives preparing for this moment." Maya stepped forward to add her voice to the transmission. "Every alien species in the galaxy has 48 hours to surrender unconditionally to human authority. Species that comply will be allowed to survive under human management. Species that resist will be exterminated." The scope of humanity's preparation was becoming clear through reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Human operatives had infiltrated every major alien government, every military organization, every critical infrastructure system. They had been building this network for 50 years, passing information and resources through hidden channels that no alien intelligence agency had detected. "You called us the weakest species," Elena said, looking directly into the cameras that were broadcasting her words to every inhabited world in galactic space. "You enslaved us because you thought we were inferior. You murdered our children because you thought we were helpless." Behind her, the Colosseum's great displays showed real-time footage of human forces taking control of alien worlds. The attacks were surgical in their precision. Each one targeted specific alien weaknesses that had been identified through decades of careful study. "You were wrong about everything," Elena concluded. "We are not weak. We are not inferior. We are not helpless. We are the most patient predators this galaxy has ever produced, and the hunt has just begun." The transmission ended with a simple message displayed across every screen in galactic space. "Humanity remembers everything. Surrender or die." Elena took Maya's hand and looked out at the stars visible through the Colosseum's crystal dome. After 50 years of slavery, 50 years of suffering, 50 years of watching her people endure unimaginable cruelty, humanity was finally free to reveal its true nature. The weakest species in the galaxy had just become its undisputed masters, and the universe would never underestimate human patience again. In the distance, the first human warships were beginning to emerge from the shadows between the stars, their weapons charging for the next phase of humanity's delayed conquest. The galaxy had spent 50 years learning to fear the strong. Now it would learn to fear the patient.